And welcome back to Mentally Fit. This is Hippie, your host. It's been a little while since our last video, but here we are again. Today I want to talk to you about it could be a sensitive topic. It's something that's difficult to talk about for a lot of people. So we're gonna approach this with some caution for me, some caution for our audience, um, and also or rather, I'm not here to disgrace anyone. I'm not here to make anyone feel bad. um, Sometimes we make decisions that we don't aren't the best for us, so we're coming to this from a place of understanding, right? um, so that being said, let's start off with the definition of hypersexuality. And it says that hypersexuality is an increased need or pressure for sexual gratification. um, this is a symptom of bipolar. um, and it's one of the things that make it so debilitating. And I know for me personally, it's something that has plagued my life, right? Personally, whether it's in relationships, or just casual, it's something that affects you, and it's also nothing to be ashamed of. Um, the thing about hypersexuality is that you often feel the need to, or that impulse to just like, you need sex, whether it's for a lot of people, it's seeking out partners, right? Just going on Tinder and having casual sex. For some people, it's sleeping with prostitutes. For some people, it's masturbation. For some people, it's different things for different people, right? And while everything is healthy in its own way, and again, we're not here to judge anyone, um, it's also very difficult because you have to do everything in moderation. And with hypersexuality, it's this feeling of go, go, go. I want to do it now, and it often leads to put us in situations that we wouldn't normally be in if our mind was in the right, if our mindset was in the right state. With hypersexuality, it often happens in mania. So it depends on how big or how small your mania is. Sometimes it's really going to determine how you're going to act out sexually. And again, this is day to day. This is different for everyone. So there's not one way that everyone's going to behave in this manner. So everyone acts out differently. So um, it's it's again, it's difficult to talk about without going into specifics and things, and we want to keep things informative here, but we also want to be honest, right? So one of the things that it can lead to is just being hypersexual. It can put you in states of, you're in mania. So it may often puts you in places where you're not making smart decisions. Maybe this isn't someone who you'd normally sleep with, or maybe you decide to have unprotected sex. So there's things like that where you have to be careful because you're trying to prevent the spreading and getting STIs and STDs and things like that, right? So it's very common for people who are dealing with sex addiction and hypersexuality to experience a situation where it pulls them back a little and they're a little bit scared, right? And for everyone it's different again, right? But I know personally I've made my mistakes, right? And thankfully, thank the universe, I'm okay, right? But I have to remind myself often, and especially in those heated moments where already that inhibition is going and that blood is pumping, and it's just you and that person, and it feels great, right? And you often slip into this place of, should I do this or should I do that? And I want you to know that it's perfectly it's normal in our community, right? So it's not something to be ashamed of, right? It's something that we have to understand that we deal with and learn ways to deal with it. For some people, it's talking about it. For other people, it's meditation. For some people, it's spiritual. Some people decide to do celibacy. There's different things. There's different things, that options that we have that might work for some people that don't work for others, right? So I just think it's important to keep things within reason, right? And I often get to this place where I'm judging myself, right, for the decisions that I've made, and oh, I shouldn't have done this, and I shouldn't have, done this with that person. And this was because I was in a state of mania. One of the things that they say is like a heightened sense, excuse me, let me see, I wrote it down here somewhere. It's like a heightened sense of emotion, so you feel these feelings of excuse me, of euphoria, this intimate, almost, this person is, I'm meant to be with this person. And it's all in your head. It's all, you're not thinking with, as they say, with the right head for men. For women, it's, I don't know, but you're not thinking, you're not in the proper state of mind, right? So I think it's important to understand what our triggers are, and to have a set of rules, right? So I'm recently speaking to someone who, they said that they have a list of things that they'll do and things that they won't do, right? And they can't date someone if there's things that it's like on the do not list, that, reasons why they wouldn't date that person. And I think it's very important for us, whether we deal with mental health or whether we just deal with regular relationships, to understand the things that we want, right? To understand and say, hey, this is what I want from a relationship, or this is what I don't want. I've dealt with this before and I don't want to deal with this again. Or I've never had this, but this is what I really want from someone. And by being honest with ourselves and with other people, hopefully we'll get those things, right? Um, so just, it's it's a touchy subject for a lot of people. I know a lot of people aren't able to talk about it because there's a lot of stigma around sex. I personally believe that you should be free to just talk about those things, right? And we should be free to talk about all these things because it's the reality, right? It's things that we go through, and it's a part of our lives when you're dealing with mental health and dealing with bipolar. So it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something I think that it's important to be open and honest about, especially with your partner, because one thing that you deal with in hypersexuality is that you kind of don't have a gauge of how much is too much sex or how much is too little. So for some people, it can just be that they think that's a normal amount, and for their partner it's really exhausting because they don't see themselves personally having sex that many times a day, or being intimate, in other ways, that many times a day. And for someone who's dealing with hypersexuality, they need that, right? Some people describe it as suffocating, and I can kind of identify with that. And I've been very, very, very fortunate to not have put myself in a situation so dangerous enough where I could have contracted an STD or STI, and again, everything's a roll of the dice. You never know, right? And I've made my mistakes, and I'll think that something is more dangerous than this thing, but in reality, we make these mistakes. So everyone's gauge is different. So it's something important to keep in mind because we want to live long lives. We want to live healthy lives. We don't want to spread infection. Um, we don't want that for our lives, right? So please, if you need to speak to someone about it, reach out to people about it. There's great sites that I found. The meditation apps on my phone, the Calm app specifically really helps me. Um, and just being honest about my sexuality. So when I find a partner, I'll tell her, this is something I'm dealing with, and I'll identify what that means for me, and if it's something whether that person can deal with or not. And at least it's off of your chest, and you've place it in that person's hands, and then they decide whether that's something they can deal with, right? But honesty is always the best policy, I think. And also just to remember that in those heightened senses, try to ground yourself, right? So for me personally, and again, it's hard, right? Because you're in the heat of the moment, maybe, and things like that. But something that helps me is to, kind of just like take deep breaths. I know, again, this sounds weird because this might be all during the time that all this good foreplay and all this stuff is going on. But I just try to ground myself. I try to remember where I am. I try to remember why I'm there, and it's okay that I'm there, right? It's okay that I'm there to enjoy time with someone, but to protect myself, right? And to protect that person, and for everything to be consensual and open and honest, because that's the only way that you can, I think, have a healthy, positive sexual relationship, is just by being honest about these things. And that's never led me in a bad place, It hasn't always worked out, but I've always felt better that I've been honest about these things, especially regarding hypersexuality and my bipolar. So, again, if it's something that you're dealing with, don't be ashamed. It's a symptom of this. It's something that it's very, very common. Many of my friends who um, deal with this illness have have those situations as well. We all do. It's not one of us are better than the other. We're all brothers and sisters, here to help each other through these situations that are so difficult that we often feel that we can't speak about. So I just want to thank you guys for tuning in again. Thank you for the support. We're slowly growing in, a slowly and in a slow way. But again, my goal is just to hopefully reach one person, and hopefully it can become a guidebook to someone who's in a situation, and they'll think, hey, I saw this video and I got to remember to ground myself and to protect myself, because I know that I'm in a heightened state of emotion and I'm not thinking clearly. And it doesn't make me crazy, it makes me human, and it also makes me a person who's dealing with a mental illness, and I have to treat this just like a person would who, if they had diabetes and they needed an insulin shot, or if someone broke their leg and they needed the crutches, things like that. So it's important that we keep things within reason, and just go from there. So again, thank you for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a lovely weekend or day.